Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Erin, I just want to thank you and welcome you to the Always Andy's Mom podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to meet you. You've done some great work here, and I've listened to almost all of them now in the past few months, and they get me through my days sometimes.
Oh, good. Well, today is an extra special day for you that you just told me. So I want you to start and just tell the audience what today is.
Today is Emmy's 18th birthday. Yeah. So her first birthday in heaven. And we are starting it by, we created a Pay It Forward campaign that we launched today. So, locally in our neighborhood. So
today, as of this recording, it's August 3rd. So I was telling her I was having a bad day too, because I was like, it was 3 years ago today. We had our last family picture and I just had been crying all morning. And then she comes on and tells me that. And so then we both start crying again. So I apologize. There might be a fair amount of tears in this one because we're both
little emotional,
not the best emotional state, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
So why don't you start out by just telling us all about Emmy?
Emmy, she was a special kid from the time she was born. She was born on 8/3/03 at 3:08 in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
8 pounds, 3 ounces in
Are you
labor
kidding
room
me?
308.
Oh my word.
Everyone in the hospital on the labor and delivery floor anyway, wanted to come and see the 8/3 baby.
Yes.
So all of her numbers matched up. It was crazy.
That is so crazy. Did you make the local newspaper? Because you totally should have.
No, I didn't. Not then, but she was, I was like, these numbers that's so crazy. All these numbers. So we knew she was going to be special from the get-go.
Yeah.
But she was a great kid and she was a happy baby. She was good and she loved people, and growing up, she did, as she got to be in a toddler, she hit the terrible twos, and I don't think she ever got out of them. She had a huge personality. You knew she was in that room if she was there.
Yeah.
So she walked into a room and she could light it up with her smile, but if she was not happy, you knew that too. She could darken the room really quick too.
Yeah. I always said that about Andy. His highs were really high and his lows were really low.
Right.
I always said that kind of what drove Eric crazy, my husband crazy, because my husband is just a real even-keeled kind of guy. He doesn't get too excited and he doesn't get too upset ever. And Andy was just this range of emotions. And they would struggle a bit.
With him.
Yeah. My husband didn't like being on the roller coaster.
So she was different as she got older. We started to notice that, like you said, her highs were really high and her lows were really low, but abnormally so. So very early on, by the time she was 5, we had her evaluated by a neurologist, and she was diagnosed with ADHD. And then even the
Andy had that too. So
the ADHD, right? The ADHD medicines weren't quite working. So we further went on to a psychiatrist, and then she was diagnosed by the time she was 7 with mood disorder. Not otherwise specified, not NOS, not otherwise specified. So, because they try not to label that, I guess, that young.
Yeah.
but she loved animals, and any animal. It didn't matter whether it had legs or scales or fur. She loved anything.
Wow.
We had a small creek by our house, and every day she would wake up, can we go frog catching today? Please, can we go frog catching today? And I'd be like, you got to give the frogs a rest. They have to eventually procreate. We have to let them catch up to how many you've caught.
Oh.
But she just loved animals. We have a lake house up near Lake George in New York.
Mhm.
And we go there every summer, and she up there, I'm like, she definitely changed the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because there was, buckets would line the front of the deck with salamanders and frogs and anything, tadpoles and fish, anything she could catch and stick in a bucket and call it her pet. She was all about it.
Oh.
But she was a great kid. By the time she was 9, she was diagnosed as bipolar. That's when she had her first real manic episode. So from the time from 9 to 17, she had been hospitalized numerous times.
Okay.
For medication adjustments. When she was 11, I actually had to put her into a residential home for about 9 months, because I guess I think it had a lot to do with her hormones, and she could not regulate her moods to begin with, and then we threw the hormones in, and she was completely out of control.
Yeah. You think about it, hormones drive all teenagers crazy, right?
That's why me crazy. Are you kidding me?
Right. So if someone is just kind of just getting those going through the system for the very first time, wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
It was a lot for her. But you know what? She learned so much while she was there, and she learned coping skills and what worked for her, and how to get through things. She was a special ed student, so she had severe dyslexia. So this kid was layered with layer upon layer upon layer of issues that just made things hard for her.
Yeah. Life was just harder.
Yeah. It was just hard for her. And she always had a smile on her face. She just was a beautiful soul. She had trouble connecting with her peers. So she didn't have very many friends. She got picked on a lot in school. A lot of bullying went on. But
I could get that too. Andy was easy to pick on too, because he always had a smile on his face too, and he was so quick to forgive. That people would wrong him, and he would just be quick to forgive, and so it made his classmates, I think, feel like it was sort of okay,
exactly,
to pick on Andy, because he was never going to pick back, really, and he would forgive you in 10 minutes, and so. Yeah, it always frustrated me, because he would come home and, be like, oh, Jack's a great kid. And I'd be thinking in my head, no, Jack is not a great kid. Jack's a jerk to you. Jack's always a jerk to you. Just because Jack decided to be nice for 5 minutes today does not mean that suddenly he's a great kid. But, I didn't want to tell him that. It just inwardly frustrated me, because I knew that tomorrow Jack wouldn't be nice and there would be tears. So it's just very easy to pick on kids that I think are so emotional and can, in general, their baseline be just kind of higher,
Yeah. That's exactly it. She was a target, because she was, she would react, and then she'd forgive. And if you were willing to be her friend again, she was willing to be your friend again.
Yeah.
So
that's it exactly.
So she was picked on a lot, which was difficult for her. But she, as she got older, I forgot where I was going.
That's okay.
But as she got older, she just struggled more with, making, so she would connect with any adult. So it seemed that as she got older, she knew that she gravitated towards adults.
Yeah.
So it was because she just knew peers were not nice to her. So she just kind of left them in the dust and said, you know what, I'm going to go to the adults who I know I can get good, positive attention from. And she used to go, because she loved animals, she would go for walks. We live in a small neighborhood, but there's literally it's a loop around a few streets in the middle. And so we call it the Kendall Loop. And so she would walk that Kendall Loop every day. When she put those Beats headphones on and she'd put her music on and she'd go for a walk. And everybody knew who the girl with the Beats headphones who walked the Kendall Loop was. Yeah. They may not have known her name. All of their dogs knew who she was.
Sure.
Because she would stop and she would pet anybody who was walking around the loop too. So she was, and if she saw a stray dog, she'd pick it up and she'd be like, oh, I think it belongs to this house. And she'd go knock on doors to find out who the owner was if the dog was outside by itself. So she just had a huge heart. She had a huge heart. So she was a good kid. She was a blessing, definitely a blessing to me. I think she taught me more in her 17 years than I ever could have taught her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
why don't you go on and talk about what happened to Emmy then?
So as I said, Emily struggled with mental health. She was bipolar. So she had probably about 6 or 7 hospitalizations from the time she was 10 to 17. Her last hospitalization was right before the pandemic shut down. So she had actually had one suicide attempt before she died. So it was in December of 2019. She came home with a puppy that she paid $1,500 for out of her own money. Oh, and unannounced, just showed up with a golden retriever puppy.
Oh my.
Yes. Oh my. So I made her return it. And I'm not that I'm against puppies, but we have 2 dogs already. And I was like, we have 2 small dogs. And it just was, and I just had to teach her, you can't just on a whim do things like that.
Yeah. You have to get a plan. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I made her return it. And when I told her that we were going to return it, she had taken some pills and, she ended up just throwing it all up. But we got her help and she went into the hospital for a week. But when she came out, she was, she was doing okay. She was in a program where she did, it was like a partial hospitalization program. So she would go to school for part of the day and she'd go to this program for part of the day. And she was doing okay. And then there was another child who was in her school who realized that Emily was an easy target. Yeah. And she was also struggling mentally and was in that same program with Emily.
Okay.
And when she was in the program with her, this girl they were both in the same school and in the same program. So that apparently is not a good mix. So when they came, so in school, this girl was telling her friends about things that Emily was disclosing in the mental health, in the group therapy.
Yeah.
And it was, she struggled with, she's like, Mom, she's telling the other kids what I'm saying, so which made her pull back in therapy. And I was trying to get involved and I'm like, well, this is what's happening. And everyone's like, oh, well, that girl says she's not doing that. I'm like, of course she's going to say she's not doing that.
Right.
But so it had gotten to the point where this girl stood up in the lunchroom and, told all her friends, like, there's the girl, she said other words, but there's the girl that I told you about. And they all started laughing.
Oh no.
And she ran out of the cafeteria and she was like the kid who never went to the cafeteria anyway. She always went to a trusted teacher's room for for lunch, but she would go pick up her lunch and go. And so she left. She went to the bathroom. She called to me. She said, Mom, I can't do today. I need you to come get me. So I went and I picked her up. And when we got home, we were talking about it. And she says, Mom, I need help with this one. I can't handle this one on my own. I think I need to go back to the hospital.
Yeah.
I said, oh, okay. And, so proud of her that she was advocating for herself and knew what she needed to keep herself safe. And we went back to the hospital, and it always takes like 30 hours in the emergency room by the time they medically clear her and
sure.
they find her a bed. And so got her settled, and I literally left her there, gave her a big hug, walked out of the hospital, and got in my car. And as I'm driving home, I get a phone call. We're shutting down for the pandemic, for COVID-19. We're not allowed. There's no visitors at all. And I was like, I just dropped my kid off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was devastated that how, I'm, at least when I had other hospitalizations, I was there every day visiting her.
Sure.
And I got a phone call that night when I got home from Emily, hysterically crying, saying, Mom, I can't do this without you. You are my person, and I don't know how to get through this without you. You have to come get me. And I was like, Em, I can't. You're there. We signed the paperwork. You're there to get the help that you need.
Yeah.
And she says, I know, but I can't do it without you. And I said, Em, you can. I'm here, and you can call me anytime. She's like, they'll only let me call you once a day. I'm like, then we will talk once a day. I promise you will get through this. This week will go quick. So she got through that week, came out, went back into another partial hospitalization program, but everything was
Zoom
virtual
or
at
something.
this point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she finished that out. She graduated from that in July. Her 17th birthday was in August. She ended up getting her driver's license on her second try. And then she had gotten a job at Target, and she was doing pretty good for a while. She's still, we were still tweaking her meds because, there was times where she was like, oh, I'm having she would have tics from the medications that she was on. So we were trying to like come down off Geodon and go up on Caplyta, just to see if it changed the chemistry a little bit so that she wasn't having the reaction of the tics to the medication. And so, we were still doing weekly therapy, psychiatrist every 4 weeks. And she had her little job at Target, and, life was good for a little while there. And we got through Christmas, and she just, like the third week of January, Target let her go. So because she was like a seasonal employee.
Sure.
So they let her go. But, sometimes it was hard for her to understand, that it wasn't a personal thing, to her, she took everything kind of personally. And then, she actually was here so the night that it, happened, she was here that night, and she had a friend over, and the girl left around 8:00. And this was a girl that she had worked in Target with. And I guess they were, bashing Target and in the back room, because Emily lost her job, but they had bonded over that. And the girl left, and Emily, so it was her stepbrother's birthday. And his birthday was the week before, but this was the weekend that we had him. And so she says, Mom, I got him a gift. I said, oh, great. So she brings it out, and it's just a card. So I'm figuring she got him like a gift card or something. And she's laughing hysterically. She thinks this is the best thing ever. It is duct taped. It's a card, and it's duct taped, and it's got zip ties around it. And he's trying to open it like in the middle of my like family room floor on the couch. And she goes, maybe you should sit on the floor. And I was like, if he needs to sit on the floor, maybe he should do this in the kitchen where it's going to be easier to clean up. And she's like, okay, let's go to the kitchen. So we went to the kitchen and, he took him literally 15 minutes to open this thing. And when he opened it, it was $1 filled with glitter, just $1 wrapped up inside of it was glitter. And so when he opened the glitter went everywhere. And she thought that was the funniest thing on earth. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Now there's glitter all over my kitchen. And, glitter is a thing that I'm still finding it.
Oh my.
So there was glitter all over my kitchen. And, he was like $1. I worked for 15 minutes for $1. And she was like, happy birthday, and
yeah.
She comes back and she says, Mom, I'm going to go get gas. It was getting ready to snow. So this was a Friday night and it was supposed to snow on Sunday. And she says, Mom, I'm going to go get gas in my car. And she just said, I'm going to go get gas in my car. And I was like, it's almost 9:00. I was like, you don't need to go get gas in your car right now. And she's like, well, I want to go see my friend Tamara anyway. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right. Make sure you're home at 11, that's the curfew. And she said, okay. And I said, all right, have fun. And out the door she went. And then I was here with my husband. We were watching a movie, and about 25 minutes later, I get a text, and all it says is, I love you. And I was like, So I immediately responded back, I love you too. But then I'm thinking about it and I'm like, that's a weird text to get from a 17-year-old who's supposed to be over at her friend's house.
Yeah.
And it just was weird. And I was like, I had, unbeknownst to Emily, I had a GPS put in there because she had sometimes had questionable decisions. So I had a GPS put in her car that she didn't know. So we had an app. I could always see where she was. So I said, let me see where she's at. So I pulled up the GPS. And when I looked at the GPS, we have a canal that's relatively close to our house. And I said, looks like that car's in the water. And I said to my husband, I was like, can you pull up the Bouncy app? And he's like, why? I'm like, I said, I don't know. It looks like Emily's car's in the water. I said, can you pull it up? And he pulls it up and he goes, it's in the same place. I said, let's go. I said, she just sent me this text that said, I love you. I said, and your mom instincts kick in, and we drove over there. So we were actually the third people on scene. It was 2 cop cars were there. And we pulled up and they were trying to shoo us away. And I'm showing them, my phone. I'm like, I have a GPS. My daughter's car is in that canal. And she's like, oh, okay. So they pulled us over. And we stood there, and her car was black, and it was literally 18 degrees at night. And it was 9:30 at night. And the canal was deep enough that the whole car is submerged. And we stood there waiting for them to find her for almost 3 hours.
Oh my word.
It was, every emergency vehicle, I think, in Somerset and Mercer County in New Jersey showed up. It was, they had a dive team come in. They had to get the state police helicopters to hover over the canal to locate the car in the water. They couldn't see it. Even with flashlights, they couldn't see it. So they had a helicopter come in and hover so that they could spot the car. So the dive team would know where to go and try and get her. So, standing on the side of the road, you try and always keep hope. And even though I'm standing there and I kept saying to my husband, like, oh my God, this is taking too long. And he's like, my husband is a firefighter by profession. So I could tell he was working and he wasn't really there with me because
Yeah.
I see him listening to them on the radios, and
Yeah.
he's watching the scene, as I'm waiting for my daughter, and he's her stepdad. So, so I could see that he was working. So I finally said to him, I said, do me a favor, call. It was actually my best friend, Helen. And I said, can you call Helen and just have her come here? Because I need somebody who's going to be here with me. I understand that you're here with me, but you're not here with me. I need somebody here with me.
Yeah. Emotionally. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he called my friend Helen, and she came down, and we stood there and waited and watched the dive team go in the water and come back out and go back in the water. And it was terrible. And then they finally, they put us in a heating tent. They told us it was cold, but their heaters weren't working. It was just a tent so that they could get her out without me
seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. So then a police officer came over, and he said, okay, we're going to drive you over to the hospital. We have her. And I said, is she okay? And he says, we're going to drive you to the hospital. And I said, oh, okay. So, my husband and I get in the police car, and they drive us to the hospital, and, we're waiting in the emergency room, and I'm just, I'm pacing, and he's like, relax, just have hope, she's here, let's find, let's keep. And then a chaplain walked out, and you just know.
Yeah.
And he came out and he says, are you Emily's mother? And I said, yes. And I said, is she okay? And he says, he's like, would you like to pray for her? And I said, yes, please. And so he held my hands, which was surprising because this is the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
And he just held my hands, and he said, let's just pray for her. And we prayed for Emily. And then he says, I'm gonna go back and see where we're at. I said, I just want to see her. And he says, I understand that. He's like, I have to check with the doctors. I don't know what's really going on. I said, okay. But in my heart of hearts, I kind of knew, but I was still trying to hold on hope.
Well, especially when he came in, I'm sure you thought, oh, she's gone. And then he said, do you want to pray for her? And then you go, oh, maybe she's not.
Right.
You
exactly.
Get that.
Exactly. And so they brought me back. I think what they did was honestly, I think they cleared out that side of the emergency room. Because she went into the children's section. Because when we went in there was not one person in maybe 10 rooms around her.
Mm-hmm.
So we went into like the waiting area of the children's emergency room, and the lights were all lowered. And I looked at my husband, I looked over at the nurses, and no one would look up at me. Not one nurse looked up at me. And I said to my husband, I said, something's really wrong because no one will even look at me. And he said, he's like, let's just wait and see what the doctor has to say. And then they called us in, and when they called us in, they pulled us into a room, and it just had an empty bed in it. And I said, oh God. And I just fell to the seat, and I said, and he said, I'm so sorry. He says, but she was down too long. We couldn't help her. We couldn't save her. And I said, okay. And he says, she's here, and you can see her if you want. And I said, absolutely. I said, what I want to see. He said, you want to see her now, or do you want to take? I said, no, I want to see her now. And I went into where they had her. And I literally walked in, and I held my baby, and I said, oh, my poor girl, you aren't being tortured anymore. Which should never be a parent's first thought when you see your child like this. But it was my first thought was, she's a piece for a minute, because her life was not peaceful between bullying and mental illness. Life was not peaceful for her. Mm-hmm. And they allowed us to stay in there for about 5 hours with her.
Wow.
And, I was able to call her biological dad, and he came, and his sister came to be with him. And that was it. At, like, I guess it was about 5:30 in the morning. They said, okay, we have to get her ready for the medical examiner to come pick her up. And that was the hardest thing that I ever had to do, was walk out of the hospital without my girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and then so I, came home, and my husband went to bed and I couldn't. So I started making phone calls, and people started coming over, and that's when, I don't even know if I remember anything after that.
Right. It just gets foggy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's, the hardest part of all of this was, Kaylee's got an older sister, biological older sister. And, she's just turned 22 a couple days ago. But she was living in South Carolina. So she's married, and, her husband's in the military. And, so she was in South Carolina, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to tell her. How do you tell, And so I said, this was while we were in the emergency room. And I said to my husband, I said, I have to call Kaylee. He says, I'll call her. I said, no, this is something that's got to come from me.
Right.
That she's the only person that I felt like it had to come from me, and, her husband was on a training in Texas. So she was home by herself.
So she was alone. Oh no.
And I was like, oh, do I wait? Like, it's not like I can even get down there to tell her, I was like, I had to tell her. And I was like, she does have a little bit of my personality in her. So I'm like, I'd be pissed off at me if I waited till tomorrow to tell her, So I called her at like 1:00 in the morning and had to tell her. And she was, she was obviously devastated, but Emily had texted her too.
Really?
So, yeah. So 2 texts. All they said was, I love you, to me and Kaylee. Oh. So, at this point, we think it's an accident.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what you're thinking. Mm-hmm.
Everything, so we have to start going through the motions. And so Saturday I talked to the medical examiner, and, people were in and out. And then I had to call the funeral home and arrange that. And so the funeral home said, come in the next day to make the arrangements. And then so Sunday morning we went in, we're making the arrangements, but it's COVID. So
sure.
There was really not much to make, we could have it for one day there. So, not the traditional, like have a wake the day before and a funeral.
Sure. Sure.
So we just had like a visitation and, at the funeral home on, the following Saturday. But in the meantime, Sunday it started to snow.
Right.
And we got 3 feet of snow between Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I was like, and so I didn't get the traditional, so a lot of people showed up on Saturday, but then it stopped. So for 3 days, it was just us. And it was,
because you're in a blizzard. Yep.
And I was like, this is just crazy. Like, it becomes so unbelievable. All I kept saying was, I can't believe this is my life. Like, yes. I still can't believe this is my life, to be honest with you.
No, I know. Right. Yep.
But so, and my husband was out there every 2 hours. So we had planned her like a visitation in our driveway in a tent for 2 days. We did like 4 to 7 on Thursday and Friday. So we had a heated tent, and we set it up like, we put pictures of Emily everywhere, and people were able to come with masks on. And, so we, that's how the community kind of came together for us, came by to our driveway tent. And then we had the funeral on Saturday. And during the funeral, we Zoomed it because it was COVID.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the Zoom so there was, we still don't know who it was, but there was kids, we don't know, but there was kids who signed on and bullied Emily on her last day.
Oh,
I had a kid who
just
signed
sick.
in as Emmy's effing corpse. I had somebody who
Oh.
signed in as she dead as shit. They were screaming, they were yelling terrible things about her driving, about how she deserved to die. Just terrible, horrible things.
Oh, I just can't even
Thankfully,
imagine. That's so
I did
horrible.
not know this during the actual funeral. The funeral service was beautiful to the people that were here. We were limited to 100 people. So 100 people that were there, the funeral
It was
service
beautiful. Mm-hmm.
was beautiful. I was able to get up and speak. My daughter spoke, her father spoke. We had people who just Emily touched had gotten up to say some words. So, at one point, the funeral director did come in and say, whoever is Zooming, you need to get off the Zoom, because people who were watching it were calling into the funeral home saying, stop the Zoom. You have to delete this, get it off.
Right.
So they did interrupt the funeral at one point to say, you need to stop Zooming, to disconnect from any kind of the Zoom that you might be on. And so we stopped the Zoom, and unfortunately, a lot of family, a lot of friends that were, from actually Emily is half Costa Rican. Her father's family's in Costa Rica. They couldn't come here. So they all signed into the Zoom and had to watch that, and then never got to see the actual funeral.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the school had actually started an investigation into the bullying, I guess, on the Zoom, and it went to the police, and so it has been escalated to the New Jersey State Police, but we don't know where it's at this point. It's with the cyber crimes unit, but who knows if anything will ever come of that, or we'll ever be able to find out who did this. But
so tragic to just make, your pain just worse.
It just, that's what it felt like. It just,
Won't this stop?
Just felt like she died and everything just went wrong going forward. Like, it started to snow 3 feet. We haven't had 3 feet of snow in 7-8 years.
Right.
I'm like, she dies. We had 3 feet of snow. Now it's like my husband was out there snow blowing my driveway every 2 hours incessantly for 3 days, like through the night, because he didn't want any snow to be on the driveway at all, so that, nobody would slip or fall if they were back game. So it just was one thing after another. And then I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how does this all happen to one family? Like,
yeah. So you really feel like you're under attack then, don't you?
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, struggling going forward. Like I was angry with God. I was angry that how could you make this child suffer so much while she was here? And then it's gone, where she just suffers in death. Like, it just feels, I felt like life was so unfair to her. And I really struggled with that. And then, in the back of my mind, I kind of always knew that maybe it was suicide, but, everyone was saying, no, it was just an accident. We think it was just an accident. And so after the police investigated it, they did actually figure out that it was suicide, because of the GPS that I had on her car. So she had actually pulled up outside of the water and sat there for 1 minute and 11 seconds. And they believe that's when she texted me and Kaylee.
Yeah.
And then she drove in. And then she waited 3.5 minutes before she actually called 911 for herself.
Yeah. So she did call 911
She
herself.
called 911. That's how the police were there by the time we got there.
Mm.
So she had called 911. And, it was too late,
So did she tell them then she was in the water, or did it not go through?
She did. No, it went through, and they had contact with her. They said they lost contact with her, which is, I guess, when the car filled up with water.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Yeah.
I mean, she never said anything to my knowledge. As far as the police told me that they investigated it. I never listened to the 911 call.
Right.
I probably shouldn't ever listen to that 911 call, but
probably not. No.
But they said that she didn't indicate that it was a suicide attempt, but
mm-hmm.
who knows? I'm sure she was panicked, and it was 18 degrees, so I'm sure that cold water was cold, and I'm sure she was just panic stricken, and I mean, how do I get out of the
Right.
So because I believe, my belief is that it was a very impulsive decision. I don't think it was a planned out thing. I think she had went to go see her friend Tamara that night, and he said, "Oh, I can't hang out tonight. We'll hang out tomorrow." And I think she just made a very impulsive decision, which is a side effect of being bipolar, is that lack of impulse control.
And a side effect of being a teenager.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, you are not the first person I've talked to that had a teenager make an impulsive decision. This is just one that obviously she could not take back.
Right. So I got that phone call on my birthday in April. On
your birthday?
On my birthday. Okay. But, as far as I'm concerned, it was Emmy giving me a gift, because I was struggling. I was struggling with being mad at God. And when they told me that it was suicide, and they confirmed that it was suicide, because I kind of went back and forth. Like, did she do this to herself? Did she not? Was this really just a tragic accident?
Because you thought about the "I love you" texts and all of that. Was that just chance that she did that ahead, or not chance? Yeah.
Right. And so on my birthday, the police called me and said, "We need to speak to you." So we went in, and that's when they let us know that they believe it was suicide. And it took the anger away from God.
Yeah.
For me. I was able now to lean into God rather than be angry at him, because
so that is a gift, isn't it? Yeah.
Huh?
That is a gift.
Was a gift. That's how I feel. I feel it was a gift. I think it was a gift from Emmy. So I wasn't struggling between going back and forth anymore.
So almost like she said, don't be mad at God anymore. You could be a little mad at me, but don't be mad at God. Right.
Right. No, I can never be mad at her, but
right. But she was one. I mean, it was almost like she wanted to take it off of where you were putting it.
Right. So, so that was my birthday in April, and then she was set to graduate high school in June, and I told the school, because she was a special ed student, I fought for that kid's IEP every year since kindergarten. So I was like, yes, is she going to graduate? And they're like, yeah, we'll get her a diploma. I said, okay, then I'm coming to graduation. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm coming. I'm going to make sure that this kid gets this diploma.
Right.
And
because it was a lot of work for her.
It was a lot of work for her.
And thinking about the trials that she went through going to school at times, and what a struggle that was, and yet she just showed up anyway. You want to celebrate that.
Exactly.
Right?
So, me and my family all got dressed up, and we went to graduation. And I mean, she was cremated, so I have a bear that has some of her ashes in it. And I brought my bear, and we went, and when it came time, they called her name. They never mentioned that she died. I walked across the stage and the board president said to me, "Congratulations, Emily." I was like, not for nothing, but I'm pretty sure I don't look 17. And nor am I wearing a cap and gown, and I'm carrying a teddy bear.
Yeah.
Like, read the room.
Right. Oh my word.
So, and the high school principal professed about how they lost this was this class, they made it to graduation, they lost so much. They lost 2 proms, they lost a senior dinner cruise, they lost the school experience for their senior year, and they lost normalcy. He never even mentioned Emily.
Never mentioned he lost a classmate.
And
just so horrible to me. My heart just breaks for you.
I was devastated because, and I've got my daughter sitting next to me, and my husband and my ex-husband were all sitting there together. And we kept waiting.
Right. Because you think they're going to mention it. They're going to mention it.
At some point, they're going to mention her. At some point, they're going to have, something. And the graduation ended. And I just looked at them. I was like, they never even mentioned her. So I literally was like blindly walking out of the stadium, because we have it in a stadium down in Trenton. And I'm like, just in shock.
Right.
I was like, I cannot believe that they knew I was coming. They saved seats for us in the front row.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't even mention her? It was so poorly coordinated that they told me, somebody came and got me and told me which 2 kids to get between.
Right.
If they ever mentioned to those 2 kids that there's going to be this 47-year-old lady coming in between you 2 to go up on stage, I'm like fighting with a senior to get in front of her, because she's just, oh no, I'm after Tyler. I'm like, no, I have to go accept my daughter's diploma. She's like, what? Like, I was like, do I really need to be doing this right now? It was just so poorly coordinated. Like I said, it was, the whole thing was just a whole, it was just terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And they just forgot her. So I got mad at the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
And I wrote a letter that was actually went pretty viral. And
you sent that to me. I read
did.
it.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
Yeah, because I was angry. How do you do this to a family? It's like kicking somebody when they're down.
Right.
You knew I was going to be there. It wasn't a surprise that the family showed up.
Especially because they already knew about the cyberbullying from the Zoom and the funeral and all of that stuff. So you'd have thought they would have been extra careful with you. Yeah, like more so as opposed to less. That makes no sense to me at all.
Right. So it just was one thing after another. But
did you receive a response back? An apology back from them at all?
They did. Yeah, they did post a public apology to the newspaper.
And did they call you too? They did something personal.
The superintendent did call me, and he said, "I'm so sorry." He really didn't have anything to do with the planning of the graduation.
Right.
He was there, but he didn't. And he made his own speech, but he didn't really have any. Anything to do with the planning. The planning really was the high school principal's job. And he did call me. But nobody, so I had sent that letter before I posted it to the newspaper. I had sent that letter to them and nobody responded. So that's when I posted it to the newspaper. And that's when he started calling me. I was like, well, now he wants to call it. Now he wants to clear his name because it's out there.
Yeah, right. But before when you were trying to do it quietly, because you did try to do it quietly.
Right. And no response. Okay. So now put it out there. And I had a lot of mad mama bears reach out to me about how terrible this was. And so it's, they did apologize, but what are they? There's nothing you can do. We can't redo it.
No,
just can't be redone. And that's Emmy. That's my Emmy.
Yeah.
So she was a great kid, and I, now I'm involved in anti-bullying campaigns, and I am working with the school district to do an anti-bullying campaign where I go into the schools, and I'm connected with another mother who in New Jersey who has lost her daughter to suicide at 12. And that was about 4 years ago. So her it's Mallory's Army is her page. And so her and I are going to hopefully start working together to really get that out. Kids have got to be nicer. They've got to be nicer. They've got to be nicer. You don't know what you're doing to other people. Like, you don't know what they've already got on their plate. That one unkind thing is going to send it knocking to the ground.
I think it's especially bad recently with the pandemic and all of this stuff. I've never seen so much anxiety and depression in teens as I have this last year plus now.
Yeah.
It's just
heartbreaking,
profound and so sad.
Yeah.
And I know it's been such a struggle for me. I mean, I've had patients that have tried to die by suicide in the last 8 months to a year now. And it just breaks my heart so much just because I've lived the loss. Right. And so then I look at the mom and I think, I so desperately don't want you to be me.
Exactly.
And I look at these kids and, oh man, they just don't know.
Right.
They just don't know.
Just hang on.
Just hang on
through this. Because
I had a girl just very matter-of-factly tell me a few weeks ago. So she had been really low, and I think she had been in for suicide attempt, or at least suicide ideation, like really bad. And she just matter-of-factly said, well, I'm not going to get that bad again, because if I get that bad, I'm just going to kill myself. She just said that to me. And then her mom started crying, and she looked at her mom. She said, why are you crying? And I looked at her and I was like, because you just told her you were going to kill yourself if things got that bad again. It's the teens they don't have that kind of foresight to think about that in some ways.
Right.
Because to her, it seemed like that was a logical decision, that if her feelings got that low again, you didn't want to do that.
Right.
But because they don't see past, they don't see.
Right.
Oh, it's just so hard. And then I think then on the other side, the ones that are like doing the crazy kind of bullying too, they don't think about those consequences.
Nope.
They don't think that what I say could really hurt someone. I mean, what were they thinking when they went on a Zoom funeral? What were they thinking? What good could come of that at all?
Exactly.
Devastating, already devastated people.
Right.
Just so,
and that's what I'm like, these kids, I think a lot of it has to do with that feeling of power that they have behind a screen.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that they probably wouldn't have shown up in person to do this.
No, none of them would have wanted to done that.
You know what I mean? It's the power that they feel like they have behind a screen. And it's with bullying too.
Yeah. Right.
I think probably 75% of bullying could be, if they weren't behind a screen, it wouldn't happen. Yeah. Because I think most kids, are kind of afraid to do it in person.
Yeah.
You do have those few that don't really care, but I think most kids would be afraid to do it in person. Say it to your face.
Yeah.
So, and that's that's part of the biggest message I want to get out there is like, especially to parents, like, you got to monitor what your kids are doing. Keep, as I know phones are a necessary evil at this point.
Yeah.
But we got to do something to not, I don't know where but it's got to start with the parents. The parents have to make sure that these kids are,
I think there just ends up being so much low self-esteem in general. And so, because you look on Instagram and all of these different social media platforms and everyone looks happy, they doctor up the picture so everyone looks beautiful and everyone looks happy. And so then all of the kids, okay, the bullied kids, the kids who end up bullying, all the kids look at the pictures of everyone else and they think, wow, they're way happier. They're way prettier. They're way everything than me. I'm feeling bad about myself. How can I feel better? And a lot of times what they do is, well, I can feel better by making somebody else look bad.
Right.
So then they end up pushing buttons and saying things and making comments and then even sometimes kids will do self-depreciating things like say bad things about themselves so that everyone else will end up saying wonderful things about them.
Right.
To make them feel better. It's just this weird kind of thing that people aren't being really genuine and real.
Right. That
That's
authenticity is gone.
Yeah, there's no authenticity at all. You just can't believe what's there. And I think that's a big problem. I talked about kids the other day, just yesterday. I talked to a teenager about lying, about how it just gets to be such a habit. You just lie all the time, and you lie to not get in trouble, and you lie to make yourself
lie to cover up the lie.
You just lie and lie and lie, and nothing's real, and it doesn't even seem like a big deal anymore. And then you don't have anybody's trust, and just that realness and authenticity and truth. Just be truthful. No?
Right.
Ugh, so sad.
It is. The message needs to get out there somehow, some way that these kids, you have, just be kind. Or if you can't be kind, like just leave people who are different alone.
Yeah. Right.
Just leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
We can preach, be kind, be kind, be kind. And that's all great. And I hope that everyone has it in them to do it. But if you don't, just leave them alone.
Just shut up, please. Right.
Just leave them alone.
It goes with the old adage, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right.
Right. Which seems to have been lost.
Right. Exactly.
Oh. Well, I'm so glad to have had you on today because really what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you a chance to celebrate Emily, to celebrate Emmy and just her as a great kid, because that's what she was. And she's an awesome human being and has a lot to offer and still can teach people a lot as you're working on the anti-bullying stuff.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm getting her.
You are paying it forward and can you talk a little bit more about this Pay It Forward in just a couple minutes here?
Yeah, I have. So we just created a card with Emmy's story on it. It's got on one side, it's got a picture painting that, a picture that she drew. And on the other side, it's got her story. And we created a Facebook page called Emmy's Champions. And we have everybody wearing blue today. I have my blue on.
Oh, too, and I didn't even know.
Do you. I did notice that. I was like, oh, she's got blue on.
Yay! I knew there was a reason I chose the shirt today.
So we have everybody wearing blue today, and because it's her birthday, and we're kicking off the Pay It Forward campaign. So we just want this card to make it from one person to the next person. Just do something kind. It doesn't have to be monetarily. It could be that you helped a little old lady cross the street and hand her that card. And, if she wants to give her mailman, a drink of water, give him that card and just pay it forward. You want to buy somebody's Starbucks, leave, buy their Starbucks, leave the card and give it to that next person. So the next person knows to do the same thing.
Oh, that's just beautiful.
Yeah. So we're hopefully that'll make this world a little bit of a kinder place. At least in my community.
Yeah. And that's all we can do is just a little bit at a time. So as this airs, I'm looking now on September 2nd. We'll see how far you've come.
Yes. Hopefully.
Well, thank you so much.
Like Emmy's Champions page and
go like Emmy's Champions page. So maybe you'll have another little boost in like 3 or 4 weeks. So that'll be beautiful. Okay.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Marcy. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.